Hey everybody, this is Beast. Welcome back to my channel. My name is ScottyAllenDay. The past few weeks I have been focusing on historical places associated with rock and roll. The more I start diving into the rock and roll genre, I've realized that it's not just rock and roll I should be looking at. I should be researching and talking about all genres of music as it became a lifeline for rock and roll to exist. Now, from this point forward, I will be talking about more genres of, music such as country, blues, especially blues rock, which basically was the foundation for metal, that's what basically launched Zeppelin into rock and roll orbit, rhythm and blues, and of course rock and roll itself. Now, as all these types kind of blend together in a way, well, it works. The reason being is when I was researching the Crystal Ballroom in Portland, Oregon, I found a few other locations in the United States between 1968 to 1970 that many towns and cities tried to ban or force out psychedelic rock. For example, Portland, Oregon, and the Oregon Liquor Control Commission banned the sale of alcohol at any live music venue in order to protect Portland's youth. So this period may have been rock and roll's dark ages. So I will be using, if I really wanted to give you a perfect example of what the dark ages are, kind of think of the movie Footloose. Footloose, they had a preacher inside of a town, a bunch of kids that went to go and dance and listen to music, and well, they had alcohol and they went across the bridge and then they died. And the preacher got the whole town council to band together and ban dancing and ban music, rock and roll music for that fact. And the towns, because rock and roll had been booming, and the town's teenagers rebelled and went to the other county, across the county line, went into a grain factory, and then did their dancing prom. Now, this is the whole, this is where this is an example of music going underground. So just by talking about the dark ages and rock and roll going underground, well, it's kind of like Prohibition. Rock and roll went underground, and the details of how rock and roll went underground is still a mystery for me. I don't know where to be able to find it. I don't know if there's any books to reading or anything about this, but this is kind of fascinating. How did rock and roll go underground, and what did it do when it went underground? So if anybody knows any information about that, please give me that information in the bio, because I absolutely want to find out about this. This is just amazing. But I will soon find out, at least until someone else beats me to it. But all I know is that after Woodstock, the rock and roll scene exploded and became increasingly popular. Needless to say, the ban that was in Portland didn't last very long. The ban was lifted about 2 years after it was put into law or put into place. And Portland's story, although vague, pretty much sums up what most towns did to drive out rock and roll. And there were some musicians that were doing podcasts, and they were talking about the rock and roll scene. And when they rolled into town to go and do a concert at a theater, and pretty much the entire town was over there with torches and pitchforks to drive them out. They thought they were the demons coming to town, and they wanted to have nothing to do with it. So this was basically the Dark Ages. But the teenagers and the younger crowd wanted it, but the older folks didn't. So, knowing the story about the dark ages of rock and roll, many venues during the height of the Fillmore years created blank pages or blackouts during rock and roll rise to fame. So in order for me to be able to find more history, I'm going by my notes, at this time I will be looking at more venues in order to be able to put together most of this mystery. Now, everybody likes a good puzzle. And when somebody puts together a puzzle like this, it makes it more fascinating, and you know, the story that you can be able to create is, and once you build that story up, and you can be able to, and you pull bits and pieces out of the air and out of the woodwork, as long as you can be able to verify it, people want to hear it. And you know, in the dark ages of rock and roll, if you're picturing it, I mean, they had their venues. It probably was down in the basement of a theater, or it was up on the second or third floor of a concert hall. But in these towns, they did play, but they kept it so quiet that those that didn't want it in town didn't know it existed. And then once it was all over, well, you know, the midnight oil always burns. And once it was all over, they were out of town just as quietly as they came into town. But listening to music and listening to psychedelic rock, man, they had to really do some serious soundproofing. And, well, you know, it might be part of what the floating floors were all about over there at the Crystal Ballroom. That's the only floating dance floor in the Pacific Northwest. So that's going to be some kind of interesting to see what that was all about. So trying to find the Dark Ages is going to be incredibly difficult, because during that period when rock and roll and metal were prohibited in towns, that once the towns left, the bar or the pub scrubbed history clean of any evidence that that band played inside of that theater, inside of that bar, inside of that music hall, or the VFW, or the Elks Lodge, or wherever they played. All of a sudden, it never existed. So that's going to be a fun one. It's going to be a fun journey. Like I said, I'm going to be talking about all music venues, because I have more fun doing the Hollywood Bowl. I mean, in the Fillmore, you had jazz and blues bands in there, and then when I was talking about Sun Records, you also had country music in there. You had some blues in there, and you know, it makes sense. It makes sense not to cover just one genre. It's time to cover multiple genres. So, hopefully you liked this video. Please leave me a comment in the comment section below. Please like the video if you liked it. Share it with your friends. If you're brand new here, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you don't miss another video. I got a surprise for you guys tomorrow. Hopefully you'll enjoy that. Until next time, keep on rocking.